us this afternoon. I know there's a lot going on. Some of us have actually been able to get out a little bit, getting our vaccines now. I've actually been out in person with people, which is just weird, but we're getting there. So I'm Jerry Burton. I'm the president of Nevada Now. Most of you know me. And we have most of our board here today. Patricia Methner, Trisha is here. She's our executive vice president. Sue Birch is you have so many titles, but let's see, what are you? I've got my list. You're chair of our legislative committee. She's our vice president, legislative action. When we're working on our Nevada Now PAC, she's the treasurer. So Sue just is my right hand. Our treasurer, Lenoring Briley, is here for the Nevada Now treasurer. And Madalena Robertson, she's our vice president, media, website guru, whatever I need, whatever I need, there she is. And Michelle Maisey, she's our secretary and had been helping me plan these wonderful programs and getting some great speakers, and we appreciate you so much. And I also wanted to mention today, I was looking around, I know there's a couple of you here. We have a couple special guests today we're going to talk with afterwards. We have some students who are interested in starting I think we've been calling it a committee, like Young Feminists. They've got maybe another name they might be calling it. It's just going to get started. But Morgan, Maya, Romina, and Nayeli. Am I saying that right, Nelly? Okay. They're sophomores from West Career and Technical Academy. I asked them to join us today, and then our board's going to talk to them afterwards about how we can kind of have a young feminist group within Nevada Now. And so we're just kind of in the works right now, but I'm excited to see some of their faces right now. I wanted them to see some of our programs and get some ideas of things they can do when they're ready to get started with their committee. So welcome. I'm glad to see you. And our next program is we've been skipping a Sunday, but next Sunday we're going to have one on May 2nd, 4 p.m. We thought it was important to have invite the AAPI community, and we're just calling it Stand United Against Racism, but to hear how we can be better supporters of the AAPI community. It's a timely thing that we didn't want to wait. And so that'll be next weekend, and we'll have an event out soon with the speakers, and our Facebook event will be up, and we'll send out an email. And so, but hold the date for next Sunday at 4 o'clock for that. And as we were saying, we're starting to get our vaccines. We typically have, before the pandemic, we would have a monthly meeting, and we'd all get together at the library, and that will be coming probably after summer. We'll get back to getting in person and meeting in person. But right now we're going to start looking for activities that we can do, maybe actually start going out and doing some actions and some volunteer opportunities. So make sure you contact us if there's things that we can help with organizations that you're involved with. It's time to start, not just doing it from behind the screen here. So we'll be doing that. And then our committee is working on the legislature with the bills. Sue's got us with our committee meeting on Tuesdays. You can find, I think Madalena is going to put some things in the link to the bills that we're supporting. And if you want to join our committee, we've probably got 25 people or so that we're on Slack, kind of keeping track of bills and finding ways to testify and show support for the bills. And we could use your help to do that. And I know several of the organizations that have joined us today are very involved with some of the bills in the legislature as well. So please let us know if you want to join us. There's links in the chat about how to join Nevada Now and become a member. And we could always use your help. We'll be doing a lot of work going into next year, especially with what's going on right now with the legislature and the ERA. And so we could use your help. Anything else, Sue, that we need to, you were going to mention the event on Tuesday.
Yeah, instead of having a regular legislative committee meeting, I'm asking everyone to join Battleborn's event. I'm going to put the link in there. They're going to give a recap of what's happened so far, and I just encourage everyone to participate and be involved.
Thanks so much. So today we're covering LGBTQ issues, the bills that we're supporting in that area. And so now on the national level, if you look on the website, you'll see that there's 6 core issues. And one of the core issues is LGBTQ plus rights. And if you look on there, you'll see it says that we're committed to fighting discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity in all areas, including employment, housing, public accommodations, health services, child custody, and military policies. Now it's committed to educational efforts that combat the adverse effects of homophobia, promote positive image in the media, ultimately ensuring civil rights protection for all. And so today, what we want to do is find out how we're doing in Nevada. With the pandemic, we know things have been much worse for everyone, and how the organizations and people who provide services, how that's affected them, how that's affected the community, and how activists can help and get involved. We like to have that piece so that people have a takeaway of how to support you and your organization and the community. And so we want to educate activists, but also have actions to take. And so federally, we know that the Equality Act has passed in the House, and we're big ERA activists here at Nevada now. It's the bill to remove the deadline has passed in the House for the Equal Rights Amendment. And we know we're going to have a tough time in the Senate. So that's one way we know that activists need to get involved. Our senators are both supporters of both bills, but the reality is we're going to need 10 Republicans to get anything done and change or eliminate the filibuster. So, we need activists to get involved and let people know, keep this with so many issues and so many things that Biden's doing a great job in the first 100 days, but these are the kind of things that we want to see passed on the federal level. And then our state ERA just passed for the second time and for the required 2 times in the legislature, and it's going to go to the ballot in 2022. And we feel this should be important to everyone because we're going to need everyone's help because it's going to be a battle. We know we're going to need everybody's support. And the language of the Nevada ERA is very inclusive. If you look around to the other states that have added an Equal Rights Amendment to their state constitutions, it pretty much mirrors what the one does on the federal level, just talking about a sex only. Ours, if you haven't read it yet, is pretty amazing. It says equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by this state or any of its political subdivisions on account of race, color, creed, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, and disability, ancestry, or national origin. And so that is very expansive, inclusive, and we've got a couple of our legislators on here I know that have been working on this. Venetia's here, and I'm a supporter of the ERA and a supporter of Nevada Now. We're happy to have the Assemblywoman here. So this is something that Nevada Now is really going to be working on. We hope we can get your support. We know Senator Scheible supports us as well. So that it's just something that I think will be very important, and we hope you'll help us. So today we're really excited to have some really great speakers to talk about this subject. We'll introduce each and learn about the organizations and the services, and then we'll have time for questions. So Sue and I'll be watching the chat for questions. Please make sure you let us know if there's something you want us to mention or talk about after the speakers. So we thought we'd kind of go in order. If you saw the graphic, we're going to go in order of the graphic for our speakers today. And so first we're going to have Cy Burnaby. She's the Executive Director at Gender Justice Nevada. I know Cy can speak for yourself, but I was just going to say that we had this wonderful training on Tuesday. We're going to have a link to it in the chat. We wanted to learn how to be a better ally, and today we will continue that. and also to learn about the pronouns and the terminology. A lot of people, including myself, it's constantly changing, and I like to go to Sci to get my update, and I can always ask a question that, I don't have to be careful. I can just say, this is just something I'm not clear on. So we always look forward to having Sci on our programs, and so go ahead, Sci, take it away and tell us what Gender Justice is doing. And you're muted, so see, now it's you.
Oh, I thought you just said things that I'm not queer on, and I'm sorry, but that kind of correct me.
Queer or clear? Yeah, well, she's both.
Whatever you're not queer on, just call me up. I'll help you out with it. So I'm Sai. I'm with Gender Justice Nevada. We are a local 501(c)(3) advocacy, empowerment, education organization. We really focus right now on building political power, meaning that so folks who are LGBTQ, especially trans or gender nonconforming in any way, bringing them in, showing them everything from how policy works to how you can have input in legislation, talking about your own power as an activist. We have a speakers bureau, which we are going to finally start again in June, doing in-person trainings for folks who are LGBTQ in learning how to tell their story as a teaching tool. And I just want to recognize somebody who's watching right now, who I think I've known her for over 20 years. Princess Anne, you're on this, right? Where are you at? Hold on. I know you're on this, Anne. Where are you?
Hi, Sai. I'm here.
There you are. So Anne and I met over 20 years ago, right, at AFAM. It was like, this is so crazy. And I always say that like troublemakers stick together, but we also kind of know each other throughout the years, and we always come back together, right?
It's true.
So a lot of, I love seeing you. This is so great. I love seeing your beautiful face, babe.
Thank you. Yours too.
I've been working in the queer community, as you can see, like for about over 20 years, worked with the LGBT Center and with HIV/AIDS education and outreach. And I don't know what else you want me to say about gender justice. We are going to be doing, I do those trans ally trainings at least once or twice a month. We put it always on our social media. So if you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, I usually post everything on those. The next one we're going to be doing is this Wednesday at 5 o'clock. I'm going to put the Zoom link into the comments, and we're going to be unpacking the fuckery that is all this legislation that's trying to ban trans students from participating in sports, because there's a huge dialogue about this. There's a lot of arguments for against. Most of it is bullshit, fear-mongering rhetoric. So we're going to unpack all that, because I feel like one of the biggest things as activists we can do is be a part of those conversations. When people say, well, maybe it's not fair for somebody who's assigned this at birth to play on this team, I can tell you all the arguments and why this is just simply, it's fear-mongering. It's trying to other trans students and trying to remove their identities from, it's just ridiculous. So we're going to talk about that on Wednesday. We also have an event on June 26th, which is a Saturday. I think it's going to start at 1 o'clock. It's going to be at the local LGBTQ Center. We are going to be honoring Senator Scheibel for all of her fearless championing of the LGBTQ community here in Nevada. So I'm excited for that. We'll have tickets and things like that, put that on social media. So be watching for that. And also, we're a 501(c)(3). So technically, I can't tell you who to vote for. But I just want to recognize that Caitlyn Jenner has now announced that she's going to be running for governor of California. And personally, not as gender justice, but please don't vote for her. That's all I can say about that. Please. She does not represent our community anymore. I just can't deal with it. It's horrible. And I also want to say that there are no LGBTQ political groups across the country that are supporting her. So this will be an interesting race to watch for sure. I think other than that, I'll just wait for questions. Jerry, if there's anything else you'd like me to talk about, I can speak on it. But yeah, that's who we are, what I do, and all of that.
I think, Sai, one of the things we talked about on Tuesday night that has really struck me lately is on the trans issue is that with the Equal Rights Amendment, I found a lot of people who I thought were very progressive, feminists. This is starting to be a way to divide us. And and it's a non-issue when you talk about, bathrooms and sports. And I know we talked about that Tuesday night. I didn't know if you could expand on that a little bit about, you were talking about the waves of feminism and how, young feminists seem to get it, but there's that second, third wave that's having a tough time.
Yeah, I think generationally, there's been a lot more acceptance the past couple of years. Not that the identities are new, they are not. They go back to the beginning of time. And it's just that there is more acceptance, there's more language to apply. There is, we're not considered we're not as individuals, we're not as, I think, especially the trans community, coming out 20, 30 years ago, being transgender meant something completely different. Being lesbian meant really something completely different. And if you look at it historically, which, my jam is LGBTQ history, you can go back to the 80s and look at the sex wars that happened within that, second wave of feminism there, where the feminists were really rejecting any kind of support for pornography or for lesbianism or for trans women, because they just thought that those topics were not palatable enough to be able to move legislation. And I think that a lot of the women who, died on that hill of not allowing for trans women and lesbians in pornography, they're still on that hill. They still do not want to move forward, and that holds everybody back. And when we talk about TERFs and we talk about SWERFs, they're still very prevalent within the feminist community, and we need to call them out, because when they say things like that, they're not only hurting us, the trans community and the sex worker community, people like that, they're hurting themselves, because then you're limiting as to what you're defining a woman as. And that's very dangerous, because if you're not allowing for even cisgender women to be gender diverse in any way, then you might as well take us back 200 years when we all had to wear dresses and obey our husbands.
Very true. Thank you. And that's one of the things that, with the Equal Rights Amendment, it reminds me of when, back in the 1920s, when they told women of color, wait, stand in the back of the march. We'll get these rights, and then we'll bring you with us afterwards. And it has that same feeling. So, thank you.
Yeah.
So next we have just kind of introducing everybody, and then we can have questions and have conversations. Andre Wade as State Director at Silver State Equality. We've not actually met in person. I did meet at a Battleborn event. We saw about your organization's working on, and we hope to be able to meet in person soon. We know that you're fighting here in Nevada on, for this LGBTQ issues, and reading on your website, I love all the civil rights and pro-equality work you're doing, and I just wanted to hear more about that and how we can support your organization. Thanks for joining us, Andre.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you, Michelle, for the coordination with everything. It's really nice to see some familiar faces like Christina Vela. I met Dr. Lauren Chapel Love virtually and saw her for the first time last Thursday. So good times. And Sai I've known for a very, very long time as well. So anyways, yes, Silver State Equality. We have been around for 2 years. We're going into our third year. We're a statewide LGBTQ civil rights organization that brings the voices of LGBTQ people and our allies to the institutions of power to create a world that is healthy, just, and fully equal. And I would be remiss if I don't shout out our Board of Advisors, Senator Scheibel, as well. So we are working to elect pro-equality candidates, get pro-equality legislation passed, and do advocacy and education throughout the entire state. And so this is our second legislative session. Right now, the priority bills for us are SOGI data collection. So the collection of sexual orientation, gender identity by the state of Nevada, which will be an option for folks to actually respond to a survey question, if you will. And then multi-parent adoption, just creating various ways that people can form a family through having more than one parent, more than one adult be a parent, which is sometimes important for those of us in the LGBTQ community. And then HIV modernization, trying to address laws that criminalize people living with HIV, where, as an example, if there's transmission or an alleged transmission, doesn't have to be actual transmission, it doesn't have to be behavior that people engage in to actually transmit behavior, HIV, and there doesn't have to be any intent there. And so these sort of things are what we're trying to address in the legislature. And, you know, I'm proud to say that for Nevada and all the progress that we've made over the decades with LGBTQ equality led by Senator Parks and then his colleagues in the legislature and advocates on the ground, we are doing what states have to do is by putting a patchwork of poor equality bills through so we can have some sense of equality for our state, absent of something like the Federal Equality Act. And so this session, as an example, we have about 20, maybe 20 plus LGBTQ specific or inclusive bills that are making their way strongly through the legislative process. And right now, only one bill has died. And so it's just an amazing feat for Nevada and our pro-equality legislators and the advocates that are really advocating for these bills, because this is one of the only ways that we can sort of ensure and enshrine equality within our state. But it's always, you know, once you get a bill passed, you can't just let your foot off the gas. So it's a constant battle, a constant fight. So I always encourage people to never just sit back on our laurels. And so in closing, you know, we partner with a lot of our progressive partners, our LGBTQ specific partners. We are here to build up capacity for organizations that are serving LGBTQ people, either knowingly or unknowingly. And so we're trying to do some of the work that, you know, Sai is doing with gender justice and making sure that we float people to her trainings that are interested or in need. And so I'm really proud of the work that Silver State Equality has been able to do in this short amount of time with the support with our colleagues and our board of advisors. And so thank you all for this uplift and having an LGBTQ specific conversation, because it's always helpful, it's always appreciated, and it just never really goes missed. So thank you for the uplift today.
Thank you for joining us. And do you have some links that we could get to the bills that you're supporting? Because our committee loves to follow other people's legislation, see if we're missing anything, and would love to be able to keep up with that.
So it's a two-parter. So you can go to silverstateequality.org. That's silverstateequality.org. Right now we have our 3 bills listed on our website. We are in the process of adding the other bills that we mentioned, but absent of that, you can go on Facebook and follow the Nevada Equality Coalition Facebook page. And then also I'm happy to send folks a list of bills that have like these short descriptions of them if you are eager to learn before you go to any of these websites that we're updating. So that's where you can find out information about the bill and find out information about Silver State Equality. And we do have our Equality Awards coming up in October or November. So we're planning for that and trying to find a venue. So exciting times for 2021.
Busy for sure. And yeah, if you could maybe send when you have events like that we can share as well. We like to be able to work in coalition. So please let us know how we can help.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. And we'll have a virtual Pride Happy Hour. Last year, Senator Scheibel was one of the featured guests. And so we're going to have another one for Pride. So I'll send that as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. We can finally start maybe doing some things in person. So we hope that we'd like to get to meet you. So thank you.
Same. Thank you.
Great. And so we also have Christina Vela here. She's the Chief Executive Director with St. Jude's Ranch for Children. She's joined us numerous times for different topics on domestic violence and how mental health is happening, needs help here in Nevada. And today we wanted to invite her back to hear about, we know the statistics on the LGBTQ plus youth and some of the services that they provide there at the ranch. And we always love when you can come to any of our programs, and welcome you here today, Christina.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be here with everybody, and of course some familiar faces and new friends, hopefully. I am going to share my screen only because I get pretty passionate about all the stuff that I want to share, and I love sharing pictures. I feel like There is incredible value in seeing real faces. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about, of course, some of the work we're doing at St. Jude's Ranch for Children and how we are working every single day to address issues related to equality, of course, specifically for our LGBTQ community, for young people that are in crisis. And we know that, a lot of young people in our community are experiencing challenges because of all sorts of things. And so I just, wanted to anchor who we're serving at St. Jude's Ranch for Children and then share a bit about our approach. So this is our campus. If you've never been to our Boulder City campus, you're all welcome to come by. I always love to show this aerial picture. It is open to the community and we've been there for 54 years. So I guarantee you, if you've driven to Lake Mead, you have driven right by us and maybe didn't even know that it was us or thought, is that the hospital? And we are not the hospital. We have had the exact same mission all of these years, which is to transform the lives of abused and at-risk children and young people by all these other words. And I'm going to say by distilling it down to two things: increasing hope and pairing it with healing. And we absolutely believe that when we can help young people be hopeful about their life and their future and pair that with good supports to help them heal from challenges they're experiencing, that we indeed can create a new caring community where we are all welcome. Our vision is audacious. Our commitment is to break the cycle of abuse and neglect. We are unapologetically assertive about breaking the cycle. We are not about butts in beds, right? I mean, it's not about just providing a home for a child. It is truly thinking about how do we impact generational abuse and neglect and marginalization of people. And, especially because we want young people to grow up and not be continually victimized or exploited. And we also don't want young people to grow up and become abusers themselves, right? Because oftentimes one or the other can happen. And our core values are long and they're here and I won't read them all, but we're just really incredibly committed to the community and so grateful that we've been here for 54 years serving so many young people. Really quick, this is our overview of our continuum of services at St. Jude's Ranch for Children. We provide some services that maybe some of you may or may not be familiar with. So our Boulder City campus is anchored with 40 acres. It is our foster care services program for children ages 0 to 18. We have residential therapeutic homes. We do sibling reunification work. We care for pregnant and parenting teens. We help young people that are going to be transitioning out of foster care. And there's so much more to talk about, right? But I'm trying to be, of course, cognizant of the time. Our second bucket or category of work is we care for homeless youth ages 18 to 24, that transition age youth time period with transitional living, rapid rehousing services, drop-in center services. That category of work is oftentimes, I think a lot of people don't realize that we care for homeless youth. So our partners are Shannon West and Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth. So we all work together. But I think a lot of times people just think of us and think of our foster care services. So I love to always share that we do more. And then our third emerging kind of category of work is caring for child victims of sex trafficking. 18 and younger, and I'll share some more as we go through this really quick. But our goal is to provide the first residential campus specialized program in Southern Nevada with a holistic and trauma-informed approach to caring for child victims of sex trafficking. Everything is anchored through our support services of clinical work, educational support, job training, discharge services, post-secondary education, and the list goes on and on. So who we serve? Well, these are literally faces of young people that have called St. Jude's Ranch for Children their home. And the reason why I always want to look at their faces is because this is who we're responsible for, right? These are the children that need our help in this community. And to be quite honest, it comes with a courageous conversation to talk about who these children really are. The truth is, we understand that disproportionately across the country, children that are living in foster care and homeless young people are Black and brown. That's just one of the realities of the children that we serve. We also see a lot of young people that are rejected from their families for a host of reasons, which includes young people who are part of the LGBTQ community. And so this little one up here on the, these are all kids that have lived at our campus. We're super proud of Jasmine right here in this blue and this purple box. Jasmine, now Boulder City is a pretty conservative community. And kids that live at St. Jude's Ranch for Children are primarily a lot of, Black and brown children. So when they go to Boulder City High School, they stick out pretty easily, right? Young people in the community know who they are. Well, Jasmine is a student, or was a student at Boulder City High School, and was the first transgendered homecoming nominee in all of Boulder City's forever and ever history. And we were so excited to celebrate Jasmine's sense of self and that pride. And she was so excited when we asked her if we could share her picture on our social media and ask our community to rally around Jasmine. When I saw Jasmine, right when she came to the ranch, she said, "Hey, Miss Christina, it's good to see you again." And I said, "Jasmine, I don't know, when did we meet?" She said, "Well, you met me before, but I was in hiding before. When you met me, I was Alex. And all my other foster homes kept kicking me out. And now I'm here and I get to be who I really am." And for us, creating space for Jasmine to feel so welcome, to be her best self is everything about who we serve and why we exist. One of the other things that I just want to call out is, and people, a lot of child welfare folks that are in this group recognize, like I do, that a lot of kids come into foster care because of, not necessarily because of abuse, physical or sexual, it's because of neglect. And when we think about neglect is a pretty big category. And oftentimes neglect is connected to poverty and to marginalized communities and to people that are on the fringes of, and not having access to services, right? And so when we think about equality, oftentimes, I just want to call attention to the fact that, the lack of resources and the lack of opportunity is absolutely part of the challenge, right? It's part of our problem. And so, when we think about equality, equity, and justice, I think about these young people, right? And how much work we have to do to make this world a safer and more just place for them. I've been talking a lot with my staff and my team about the differences between equality, equity, and justice. And I love this image that I just wanted to share with you all. We certainly are looking to create a more equal society where everyone benefits from the same supports. However, we know that some people need more, right? If you think of this first picture here on the left, where everybody's standing on the same size of the suitcase or the box, if you will, you see that there's still somebody left out, right? She still can't see. And then when we think about equity, we think, everybody gets the support they need. And so, yeah, that's better, right? Because now even the smallest person who was blocked on the left side can now see the game. But so much of our focus of our work is around justice, right? Is how can we accommodate or remove the cause of the inequity to begin with? Whoops. And so removing systemic barriers is such an important part of our work, we believe, is really calling out the fact that, the inequity is oftentimes created by systemic injustices. And so how do we right those? In another, let's see, it won't let me. In another way, I think of this picture of, I think of this as children, right? So you can see the child on the left has the same ladder size as the child on the right. They look to be very similar. They each have a bag. They both have access within, sort of reach to things in front of them. But if we think about the imbalance, the child on the right has access to so much more. Let's imagine that those little red apples represent a family and love and a home and food in the refrigerator and support for whoever they are. But the child on the right doesn't have as much access to this, to resources that really help manage this imbalance in the world. And so the children that we serve at St. Jude's Ranch for Children tend to be kids like the ones on the right, who are looking up at this big tree and thinking, why don't I have the same opportunities that another child has? And so our goal is to really increase a sense of hopefulness in children, that with the right support system and with helping young people feel their very best selves, and while we're advocating for their rights, that indeed we can shift the imbalance and help young people like we do, where young people, you know, despite all the adversities in their lives, can go on to college and turn their pain into power and go out to be the advocates that we all need, right? So helping people with lived experiences go and advocate for policy change, whether they were homeless, whether they're part of the LGBTQ community who felt left out, or whether they're a victim of abuse or neglect or sex trafficking. People with those lived experiences we have a lot to learn from them, including children, right? We talk a lot about the intersection between child abuse and neglect, youth homelessness, sex trafficking, and the juvenile justice system, and the interplay between all of those. And especially when we have young people that we're serving that feel like they don't have a safety net, or that the laws don't protect them, or they feel left out. And so certainly that's, you know, that could be any number of young people that either, like Jasmine, who didn't feel supported previously, but could come and live with us. But this intersection of all of these sort of very complex social issues, there is an interrelation to them too. And so we believe that if we have a child who is a victim of abuse and neglect, and if we don't help them, very quickly another outcome could be that they become homeless. And when a young person becomes homeless, we see involvement in the juvenile justice system. And when we see that, we see young people out on the streets that are falling prey to sex trafficking. So I boldly will say that many times outcomes that young people are experiencing are an outcome of a system that is not serving them equally and fairly and justly. And so those are part of those like courageous conversations that we have out in the community. Next, I just want to update real quick, because some of you do know about our project, the Healing Center, which will be the first of its kind residential campus to care for child victims of sex trafficking. When we think back at this purple box here, you know, if we don't help young people break the cycle of abuse and neglect in whatever life experiences or the combination of experiences that they're having, if we don't break that cycle, they'll grow up to continue generational things like poverty and disenfranchisement, you know, just like marginalization and homelessness. And it breaks my heart when I meet a young person who's living in foster care who says, oh yeah, my mom was in foster care and my grandma was in foster care, or my whole family's been homeless. So how do we interrupt those cycles? Well, we have to create a space of healing. And so this is a 3D picture of what will be the Healing Center. That's actually Boulder City, the landscape as it is. This whole campus here is a 3D rendering. So we are in our capital campaign stage, but we're just doing so great at being able to bring the Healing Center online. This is a drawing of what the Healing Center, you can see almost like a compass, right? That North Star there is what we hope for all children, to be able to have direction in their lives as we help them increase healing and, you know, a hopeful young person that knows that their past does not define their future. During COVID, the last thing, and I know I'm a little bit over my time, I just wanted to share, during COVID, last year, we know there was a lot of things happening in the community. Besides COVID, we had Black Lives Matter, we had, you know, all this sort of social injustice conversations, and we're not afraid to have those conversations with our kids that call St. Jude's Ranch for Children their home. Now, we needed kids to get busy because everybody was quarantining on campus, right? We didn't get to close our doors. I mean, we still had kids to take care of. So we created a mural challenge, and these are pictures on our campus of the murals that our children created. And I just want to leave you with how hopeful these things are. So what you can't see on one part of the picture is this is a megaphone. And it's be a voice, not an echo, and be brave and stand up and speak out, right? And never stop dreaming and radiate positivity. These are the words that our kids are encouraging the world to accept, right? Like, who are we to not, I mean, like, we got to get with it, right? Even young people know. This is another one: the greater your storm, the brighter your rainbow. And that rainbow is the handprints of children that lived in that particular house, that this was their design. So every house got kind of their own piece of the wall to do a mural. This one's absolutely fantastic, right? As a phoenix, that together we will rise. And so is the message over and over again, to empower our young people to share how they feel about themselves and the world. This one was really powerful. We have a lot of Black and brown children on our campus, and they were feeling a lot of emotions about everything that was going on in the world. And this was an incredible opportunity for them to share their dream of, I would interpret that as love and equality and justice for all, including all of our children, regardless of their color. And here's some young kids just a couple weeks ago. This is why we have to dream big, right? These two little kiddos are part of our homeless family. Their mom is homeless, and we're grateful that we're able to give mom a safe place to raise her children. But look at these beautiful faces, right? They deserve a world that doesn't see them as, you know, as an outcast, but rather that they have an incredible value in our community. So I'll stop there. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share. And of course, I'll take questions later. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. That was wonderful. And those drawings were just amazing. I'm glad you had that in your presentation. We could see. And as some of you know, the Coming Nevada Now meetings, we really loved the Healing Center when we first heard about it a couple Christmases ago. That was our fundraiser, because we just were amazed with the work you were doing. When we were focusing on child sex trafficking kind of before the pandemic. So thank you so much. It's good to see that it's taking shape. So
it's coming along. It is coming along. So thank you.
We love the work you're doing. So I inadvertently jumped over Dr. Patterson. So our next two speakers will be our doctors. Dr. Christina Patterson was here before when we were doing one on program on mental health, and we welcome you back. And we wanted to hear about the specialty and the therapy that you do with the LGBTQ plus community and the services you provide. And then we'll hear from Dr. Love after that. Thanks, Christina.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jerry. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Christina Patterson. I'm a licensed psychologist in the states of Nevada and New Mexico. My pronouns are they and she. Super excited to be back, especially if I can talk about queer healthcare. That's kind of my favorite thing to talk about. So happy to be here. I am a psychologist currently at UNLV. I work with our student counseling and psych services, specializing in LGBTQ healthcare. I'm part of our transgender care team. I lead our LGBTQ plus support group, and I also just got approved to create a training rotation for incoming psychology interns to specialize in LGBTQ healthcare. So I'm super excited about this. Outside of that, I also specialize in policy work, both mental health policy and LGBTQ policy. So I'm the co-chair of the Legislative Committee for the Nevada Psychological Association, and I'm the co-chair of the Public Policy Committee for Division 44, which is the Society for the Psychology of Sexual Orientation and Gender Diversity. I always have to remember that's way too long of a name, but that is our name, and we under the American Psychological Association. And so I'm super excited to talk about really the intersection of mental health and policy today is what I thought I would talk about. I'm really passionate about providing information or how policy impacts the mental health well-being of LGBTQ plus folks. So we know that equalizing legislation improves the overall mental health well-being of queer folks, and we know that anti-legislation or banning legislation decreases the mental health of queer folks. In particular, there is something called the minority stress model within the mental health community, and basically what this posits and what the research indicates is that LGBTQ plus folks are disproportionately more likely to have mental health concerns like anxiety, depression, trauma, and not because they're LGBTQ+, but because of the systemic discrimination that they experience, both through policy, but also through the cisnormative and heteronormative societies that we live in. And so when people are forced to exist in a world that not only others them, but ostracizes, excludes, and rejects them, we continue to see increased mental health. So within a mental health arena, one of the things that I work on a lot, and I know Dr. Chapel Love does as well, is working on things like internalized homophobia, internalized transphobia, and these different ways that this can take root. And because LGBTQ+ folks are more likely to experience things like trauma, homelessness, influences in child welfare systems, et cetera, basically all of those things, we see higher rates of other mental health concerns. And so the pieces that I work on are not just what I do in the clinical room, which I'm incredibly in love with. It's a really cool job. I couldn't have chosen a better job. Good thing I didn't. But it's also this piece where I want us to have policy changes, because this is going to actually have the biggest widespread, biggest bang for your buck change. So within Division 44, my work at the federal policy level is that what we have actually done this last year, and we rolled out at the beginning of this year that we continue to expand upon, is we have put together one-stop shopping centers for people who are interested in developing advocacy at the state level to utilize psychological research to help support their positions, whether that's to support equalizing legislation or to oppose banning or anti-legislation. And I will link our resources in the chat. And so this is what we've been trying to do, is move psychological science to be easily accessible to all folks doing advocacy work so that they can make better cases for the work that they're doing as well. So I will pause there for time. Excited to answer questions, but I'll start dropping some links in the chat.
Thank you. Yes, we'll watch for some questions and do that after. So also we have Dr. Lauren Chapel-Love, licensed counseling psychologist and owner of ELF Psychological Services, focusing on diverse populations. And I could talk a little bit more with the bio, but I'll let the Dr. Love talk about what they work on. And thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you for letting me step into this space. I am quaking in my boots after going after Dr. Patterson over there. And when I say that they are the expert in the area that I go to, that is 100% the truth. So in a lot of ways, we spoke about the federal advocacy and national things that are going on. I was hoping to speak more about what we're going through locally. Certainly there are a number of psychologists and mental health professionals that, people practicing and training in psychological science that are doing the work. Speaking of that minority health or minority stress and health model, what we're seeing and what certainly we have been seeing from COVID, and particularly impacting LGBTQ youth, are that either extant or currently existing mental health symptoms, anxiety, depression, things that relate to trauma. Sometimes they can be increasing, and other times folks with no history are finding that, oh my gosh, I'm really experiencing depression or anxiety for maybe some of the first times in my life right now. So we are, 8,634 days into 2 weeks to curb the curve, I believe, here. So some of this is not new for people, and it's certainly continuing in a lot of ways. So what I've been particularly proud of is that there are organizations and folks that are doing a lot more of the clinical work. So what can we do? Those kind of tangible pieces is what I heard you asking about in the beginning. Being able to have referral services is a big deal, in much the same way that I do work in Black community spaces, and we have to talk about training for clinicians. How damaging is it if I go to a therapist and they say, well, all lives matter. Similarly, when we're talking intersectionality, or similarly when speaking with LGBTQ folks, how damaging is it, for a therapist or someone who is supposed to be in that healing space and helping you get through something, say something equally damaging to you, your identity, your pronouns, invalidation, the whole 9 yards. I'm at work, so I'm not really going to get into it because I'll start cussing. So from that, there are, like I said, always feel free to reach out if anybody's searching for referral services. I'd be happy to help. If I don't know who can help, I will make it my business to find someone that's going to be able to do so. I think that there's a pretty strong community here that is able to recognize we need more training, recognize that we have awesome folks doing things at the legislative level, the national level, the federal level as well. So I'm open for any questions. I know that was extremely open-ended, certainly to go off of things related to allyship as well. Just kind of remembering that it's not self-appointed and that it's important to be in a place where you can take a back seat should you need to. That's definitely something I'm always working on because I always want to like kick a door down, and just having some grace with yourself. And so recognizing we're all going through a lot of tough things right now, and people are here to help. I will definitely put my info in the link here, and I look forward to questions.
And Dr. Love, just you kind of touched on it, but with the pandemic, did you see an increase with yours, Dr. Patterson's service, the needs, or and I know you couldn't just close down. Were you doing it on Zoom? I mean, were you helping people remotely? I mean, how did that work?
That's a great question. To speak from my own practice, I do private practice, and I'm going to estimate about 90% of the folks that I see are either identifying as BIPOC or Black or LGBTQ+, things along those lines. And so I tend to see a pretty biased part of the spectrum. But yes, there is a drastic need. I am consistently having a wait list, things like that. To say a bit of where Nevada is at on the national scale, we are 51st, which is my nice way of saying last in the nation when I last checked, related to ratio for doctoral level clinicians who are practicing psychological services and folks who are looking for said clinicians, which is to say that there is a significant doctor shortage. So I've definitely seen an increase in my own practice. I also work with the Nevada Psychological Association on the executive board with Dr. Patterson. I'm their current president-elect and president for next year. And so there's a number of different trainings. We've been focusing a lot more on community outreach. That had been a pretty consistent piece of feedback that we got, kind of, people with doctorates being in some lofty academic tower rather than, nope, I'm more of a boots on the ground kind of psychologist. I want to be out there. I want to be in the places where the communities that we are serving are. And so I think there's been some definite changes. I'm certainly seeing people, like a lot of folks in the psych field, via telebehavioral health services. So kind of video like this, a more secure version of, it's not Zoom, it's a, as I said, a more HIPAA compliant version and things like that. So there's definitely been some things that we're adapting, and folks are starting to come back into the office as well, but there are a number of different options for people if they're looking for treatment, and be that something like a text service or going online or in person. A lot of what I do is also helping community members like understand and be able to gain skills to be better consumers of their own health care. So what questions can I ask my therapist, or what do I do if something happened and I don't really feel comfortable with it? Can I talk to them about that? Is it okay for me to talk about sex? Is it okay for me to talk about my sexuality? What if I'm not really going to them per se for something that I think, well, okay, depression very often links to a lot of different areas in your life. And so I always tell people, I ask all of my nosy neighbor questions because it helps me help you a lot better. And to say the least, one of the more important things I learned when I was back in school was just because a person has X, Y, or Z identity does not mean that it is the thing that they're coming in my office for. But I also believe that we clinicians, similar to the communities that we serve, we don't exist in a silo. We are all living through history. This past week certainly has been atrocious for a lot of folks related to the Chauvin trial. And so being able to bring things up and go to the spaces that we are carving out as we speak, I think is going to be able to help some of what we've seen.
Thank you. Dr. Patterson, do you have anything to add to that? And then we'll go to the senator.
It is absolutely the same. We have quite a wait list at the university. Particularly, I linked in the chat, we have been putting out different video resources that we recorded over the last year to provide support. And one of the ones I did almost a year ago, looking at how short my hair was, and I can't wait to shave it off again when I can get back into doing that in person, that I actually put a video up called Quarantining While Queer, because what we saw in the last year was also increased rates of LGBTQ folks being forced and stuck into homes that were maybe perhaps on the nice side not interested, all the way to non-affirming and dangerous. And what does that look like, and how do we help keep folks safe while they're in non-affirming environments and at times dangerous environments? And so we put out a whole variety of resources, but absolutely, to kind of put into perspective, there are less than 1,000 licensed psychologists in the state of Nevada, and that's from the time we started licensing, not currently. From the time Nevada started licensing psychologists to present day, we have less than 1,000, and that is just a ridiculously small amount. We need to build our workforce. We need to bring psychologists in.
Thank you. Yeah, number 51st. We're on the bottom of education as well, and we know mental health when we talked about that, and so thank you for talking about that. So we're grateful that the Senator Scheibel's in the car driving and said she could stick it out here, and we were hoping we keep hearing your name. All the organizations mention you, so it's wonderful to have you here. And we just wanted an update. You were with us the last program, and some of the bills that you're working on and how that's going, and we're so glad you could join us on the road.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you for having me. In case any of you don't know me, I'm Melanie Scheibel. I represent District 9 in Las Vegas. It's the southwest part of the valley, Rhodes Ranch, the Ridges, Mountain's Edge, that area. And we did pull over and we parked, so hopefully there's not too much road noise and too much movement. Don't make you guys car sick. But thank you for having me on the program again. Like Jerry said, I was here a couple weeks ago talking about some of the awesome legislation that we're working on in Nevada, and I'm proud to say that we are not one of those awful, hateful states that is considering a lot of anti-trans legislation this year. While we certainly have some people in the building and some people in Nevada who would support those measures, they are not in the building. So, well, sorry, some of them are in the building, but they're not in the majority because we have a Democratic majority and a progressive Democratic majority. And so I feel very, very lucky to get to work on pro-LGBTQ and pro-equality legislation this year. Andre mentioned a couple of our, key pieces of policy that are making their way through the system. The bill for third parent adoptions is still in, it's now on the Senate side. It made it through the Assembly. It's now on the Senate side. We have a couple of bills that have been referred to finance, which can be scary because certainly not as many bills come out of finance as go in, but it does not, contrary to what some may believe or what someone may tell you, that does not mean that the bills are not moving. It means that they have some costs associated with them, and we're thinking about putting the money behind them. So two of those bills are mine. One of them is a bill to require the Nevada Department of Corrections to develop policies for housing and cultural competence for trans people who are in their custody. Another one is a bill to require all insurance companies, including Medicaid, to cover the necessary medical treatment for people experiencing gender dysphoria. And also in the money committees are
starting to lose you for a second. See if we get you back.
The other
Senator, I think we're losing you.
LGBTQ pieces of policy. Actually, wait, the S would include LGBTQ. Oh, maybe that was my.
I'm going to text her and let her know we're losing her. See if we can get her back on. Well, while we're trying to catch her, Benicia, since we've got you on the Assemblywoman, do you have anything that we can add about bills that I know we've just lost the senator for a second? Oh, you're still muted too. And I know we have Claire on too, so.
The ones that she's already spoken about, the AB 115, which is the multiple parent one that is out of the Assembly and in the Senate. And then Senate Bill 109 and 257 are now over in the Assembly, but I don't know when they're being heard. I am not on Judiciary or in Health and Human Services, so I don't know. I don't know when they'll be heard, but I have great faith that they will make it through because we do have a great group of people in the assembly right now. So it's fantastic, actually. As a freshman for the first year, to see some of these things that we didn't think were going to move at all, and to see not all, but a good amount of them, going through, it feels actually really good that we may not be tackling some of the really big issues, affordable housing, that I was really hoping that we would, but seeing some of these other, the other bills that we're doing about humanity and equality, I'm very, very excited to be involved with. And
thanks for stepping in. I know that we have, I think on our list too, SB 139, that I think you were talking, and I know that Sai's talked to us about the gender dysphoria bill, covering that for insurance to cover that. AB 280 is the one about the public restrooms, right, Sai? And SB 109, requiring government agencies in Nevada to request information related to sexual orientation and gender identity. Those are the three I know we were talking about. She said that she sent a message to the group. Did we see something from the senator? I don't see it, but. So, well, if she gets back on, we'll hear some more about it. So we can have a little bit of time for questions if people had. I'm going to throw one out, and then we can watch in the chat, Sue and I. One of the things that was brought to my attention, we talked about youth, LGBTQ youth, and some of the services. Zoe Nicholson has brought to my attention, she's in California, but the lack of like housing and services for senior LGBTQ plus people. And I didn't know if anyone could speak to that we're 51st in Nevada on so many things. How are we doing with, helping seniors in Nevada? Didn't know can you speak on that, Sai, or?
Well, I know in a lot of other cities, we see LGBTQ senior housing. We haven't, I'm not even sure there's been an attempt here for that. It's needed for sure. I know that the center has some senior groups. I know that it is a growing population. I know that a lot of times when LGBTQ elders do want to live in a senior community, a lot of times they have to go back in the closet to be, accepted in that community, which we're looking at housing rights there for sure. But yeah, here locally, there's not any that I know of. And a lot of times when those systems aren't available, it just comes to like a word of mouth type thing of like, oh, this apartment complex or this senior community is friendly. And then on the flip side of it, we'll see when they are discriminatory, and then hopefully someone like the ACLU will pick up that case and fight that. But yeah, I don't know of any local, I don't know, maybe Andre does, I'm not sure, but I don't know of any local attempts to do that, although it is very much needed.
Is Andre still with us? Didn't see if he was there. So
he's working on, yeah, he just had to jump off. His power went out real quick. He's going to jump back on.
Okay.
Okay.
So Sue, did you see any other questions? I know there was a question about the capacity for the healing center. Christina, I didn't know if you
Christina answered it in the chat.
Did you answer that one? Okay. I didn't know if people saw. You said 63 beds then. Okay.
Yeah, if I can just add real quick, it will be 60 beds in terms of, we'll have 6 houses, but we will have the first 3 emergency shelter rooms available for child victims of sex trafficking. So currently, children, when they come into contact with law enforcement really only has one of 2 choices. The first one is to take them to Child Haven, but because it's not a really secure facility, it is secure, meaning, there's gates and whatnot, but young people can kind of jump the fence and then they run back to their trafficker. In the other instance, young people are going to the juvenile detention facility, and that's unfortunately sending the wrong message to young people about who's at fault in this situation.
I'm still in this meeting with now, so let me get like 5 more minutes or so, I think.
Sorry. So we're really excited to have the first emergency shelter beds to bypass detention and Child Haven so that young people can come at 2 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon you know, in order to get intake into the program. So I just wanted to offer a little bit more detail. So thank you.
No, thank you. Did you see any other questions we had? Does anybody, you can put up your hand or you can let us know that you have a question. You don't have to just write it in the chat. So,
Jerry, I just wanted to add something really quick because somebody alluded to this earlier. When we look at this legislation that's happening in these other states, and we're looking at over 100 pieces that are anti-LGBTQ, it's a very real attack that's happening. Some of the consequences so far that we're seeing, even without this legislation being passed, is that a lot of these parents and family of trans youth that are being denied now trans-friendly health care, which is not just, you know, we're not just talking about gender-affirming surgeries. You know, we're also talking about talk therapy and things like that that will not be accessible, that right now these parents are being forced to look at how they might be able to live in other states and just to get health care for their children. And one of the other consequences that we see with this legislation and this rhetoric is that one of the statistics I saw recently was that within 24 hours of the previous president, when he, which I won't say his name, that when he enacted his trans military ban, within a day, we saw calls to the Trevor hotline, which is an LGBTQ-centered suicide prevention hotline, go up by almost 20%. And that was just a direct result of that policy being put in place. And so, again, it's great to live in a state that is doing so well right now, but we need to look at what's happening in other states. We need to look at these because what happens in other states could easily happen in our state years down the line. So even though, you know, we're doing a great job of putting protections in place, we need to keep an eye on what's happening nationally.
I want to echo what Sarah was saying. This is something that we're working on right now. We're actually starting to do a lot of investigation of the bills that are slipping through because our focus is so diverted right now. And what we're seeing on the national level, right, is going to impact well-being even of our folks here in Nevada. I can speak for myself as a trans-identified person. It's been a rough year, right? And I have capabilities, I have education regarding mental health. And so imagining what the impact will be. And what we started to see was the last legislative session, there was a couple of states that had the trans bans regarding trans youth in sports, and they weren't really slipping through. And then the pandemic happened. And then this year we've seen. And so there will be things that continue to echo through and seeing what has worked, what hasn't worked, what courts end up saying in the long run. And so we will see this play out for quite a long time. Even the states that the legislation doesn't go through on will have really significant impact on the mental health well-being of folks across the entire nation.
Thank you. I could definitely see that. I know one of the things that Sai talked about was how important it was for us to learn about types of things like the pronouns and the way we speak, because it does affect, you know, people's mental health. And that's why, you know, we have had the training and trying to stay on top of that. So Sai, are you there?
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I was multitasking.
I completely get it. I was just saying that one of the things that really struck me from the training was the importance of learning about pronouns. And you had said when just something that simple can affect someone's mental health.
Definitely. It reduces suicide ideation. I mean, I love seeing on these meetings where everybody's posting their pronouns and then and asserting those. It's very important.
Thank you. Did we see anything? So I think Robin was saying one thing that we can help be an ally. You know, we're watching legislation. We know we've got some good legislation going through here in Nevada. We're trying to support that. We can give to organizations that are, you know, working in the community. And anyone can answer this. I know Sai's a big activist. And what are ways that people can be an ally, better ways that we can be an ally activist? What do you think, Sai?
I think one of the biggest things, I'm good, okay. So I think one of the biggest things is being educated and continually being educated. As Jerry said, it is always rapidly evolving. That's how language moves. That's how marginalized communities move, is with being more inclusive with language and things like that. If you're running a nonprofit or an organization of any kind, I would ask you, please, especially if you're serving, I would say youth, anyone, homeless folks, people within the queer community, especially to train your staff, to train everybody on your staff, to train the receptionist, anybody who has any kind of contact, people on your hotline, because the minute that LGBTQ people hear something that's problematic, or if staff thinks they can dead name or misgender and get away with it, things like that, then your whole organization is seen as being not LGBTQ friendly. All it takes is that one staff to say something, and they might not have the intent to hurt, but the impact is still the same. So I would encourage you, if you have the power and you're in charge of some of these systems, to train staff. We do training. There are many people who do training. So get educated. It, to me, is the biggest thing, because that makes you a good ally, is having a good understanding of our community.
Dr. Lev, can you think of anything we've missed on that subject?
I love that, the education piece. I appreciate how you really put the onus on the person. So what can I go out there and do? Can I take size training? Can I go read a book? Can I, do things along those lines? And I think it goes up the spectrum of power here too, right? So if I am being asked to speak at a university, offering payment for that, or for marginalized communities, things along those lines, and really being an ear, I think is important. I'm biased because I try and talk to and listen to people all the time anyway, but being able to have just to create space sometimes, but more so being willing to be there and step up when people ask you to as well.
This is Christina. If I could just add, one of the things that we did at St. Jude's Ranch for Children is we came in to contact and through our homeless programs, through a program called True Colors United. And we found their services and their training curriculum to be really, really helpful, especially with innovative solutions for youth homelessness and that unique experience of LGBTQ young people. We look for local support or ways to get training locally, but that training program through True Colors United was really well received. Every single person, to size a comment, every single person in our organization did go through that training. We're really proud of that, but we also know that going to a one-time training doesn't get us off the hook, right? It's not like, oh, we can check the box and so now we feel good about ourselves. But how do we really create a culture of accountability around how we, talk to each other and about each other? And so I will say it's not easy work, right? To be present and mindful, but it is the really important investment in how we care for, young people in need. So I just wanted to add those comments. So thank you.
Christina, I love that because the psychology research, if I can nerd out here for a moment, really shadows that. If I train a group of people 6 months later, how much are they going to be, improved or further educated? That's not really how it works. So continuing the education component as well as really holding people accountable and having that culture, creating that space.
And I know, getting the information we had from Cy the other night, I just wanted to go back and listen to it again and again because it's a lot of information. It takes a bit for it all to sink in, and then we need to stay on top of how it's changing. One of the things that I'm again ERA. You can see my ERA activist. I'm a big ERA activist. I keep hearing these arguments about trans issues and how it's dividing even the feminist community. And my husband heard us talking, and he's like, "It's the new thing now to divide even our country." It just seems like people are hopping on that. Just that's what they're using right now. So we need to learn about that, and that's why I was happy to have Cy come on and talk to us about issues with trans issues and the ways that this legislation is all over the country. Luckily not here in Nevada, but it's something that we've got to watch. And I'm shocked by people I find to be very progressive, talking that way, and it's something we just have to stay on top of. So thank you for talking about that. Is there anything else we have, Sue, in the chat, or anybody else have anything else they want to bring up that we haven't covered, a question that you have?
Assemblywoman Thomas had to get on a plane, so she's AB 344 is going to the Senate Health and Human Service Committee on Tuesday, and it's a bill for seniors and people with disabilities, hospital to home care, and she needs our support to listen, call in. So just want to put that out there.
And Michelle, is that the one that we were talking about, or is that a different bill than you were having us keep an eye on?
It's the same one.
Is that the one? Okay, great, because
Yes.
I've been following that one. That's one that SEIU is.
Oh no, that's a home health care bill.
Oh.
That's a home care workers. That's a different one. But the one that she was talking about, we are tracking as well.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
We'll
You're welcome.
that. Venetia?
I just wanted to add quickly, kind of jumping off of what Assemblywoman Thomas had put in the chat, is that please, if you have never called in to support or oppose any bills in the legislature, please start doing that this session, and include not only your state assembly person and your state senator, but also keep in mind that you can also call or email the leadership, because those of us might be on some committees and not on others, but the leadership kind of keeps an eye on what's going on everything. So if you haven't done that before, please keep that in mind. And along the same thoughts, as soon as the legislature is over, we start all over again working on things for the next legislative session. So if there are things that you have in mind or things that don't get through, please reach out, including to me and any of the assembly folks or Senate folks that come to now or that are active in the community. We're happy to help work on bills and carry bills to other areas. There are a lot of academies and things that go on where legislators go and meet with other legislators across the country and talk about bills. So if there are bills that you think could be good in other states, especially those that might help counter some of the other things, please keep us in mind for that as well, because that's part of what we want to do. So thank you.
And also, one of the things we've been working on, one of the bill that we've kind of adopted was AB 224. Samantha Glover has a bill to get period products in schools. And so one of the things that our legislative committee did, Sue's our chair, was write to the education committee, all of the people on the committee, and there's just different ways that we can go about doing this. We also reached out to Virginia because they had a similar bill that Samantha had used for the language. We met with a state senator there to find out how they got it through in Virginia. And so there are ways we can work with other states, and they may have legislation that went through that would be great for us that we could bring to someone. So I think that's a great way to be a good advocate as well. So anything else, Sue, do you see? I think we've gone over our time, but we always know we have time with Zoom. We can go a little longer on our programs. They usually run past an hour these days because it's always such an important topic, and we want to have time for questions. So we appreciate you being here, Sue.
I think there's just a very important statement from Cy in the chat. Cy, I don't know if you want to repeat it or whatever, but
yes, please.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think, again, going back to talking about the trans community, a lot of people think that that it's like this monolith, right? And it's not. It's the trans community is very diverse. And it's folks within our community learning how diverse it is. And, and I think it's important not only to know all the terminology, but to know that a lot of times when we talk about labels and categorizations and things like that, those can be unique to everybody. And just what I put in the chat. And I think that, especially when we're looking at legislation, that we're not just looking, at trans legislation, but we're talking about gender diversity, and we're talking about gender expression and things like that, and access to spaces. And that's not just a trans issue, but that's something that really affects everybody.
Thank you. And if they watched the training that you gave the other night, you went into quite a bit of detail about that. Thank you. So thanks for joining us this afternoon, evening. If you have any questions or anything you want us to forward to one of the speakers, I think most of the links are to different organizations are in the chat, but we can share that with you. We appreciate you being here. We hope you'll come next Sunday, 4 o'clock, we're working with the AAPI community to be better allies in that space. And we just appreciate you being here, and you can unmute and say goodbye.